Welcome to the Ed Leaders Edge podcast, where we interview innovators and thought leaders in the field of education who are helping students thrive. I'm your host, Ed Madison. I'm a professor and researcher at the University of Oregon, an educational consultant, and serve as executive director of the Journalistic Learning Initiative, a nonprofit organization that empowers elementary, middle, and high school students to discover their voice, improve academic outcomes, and become self-directed learners through project-based storytelling. Welcome to our program. Welcome back to the podcast. As superintendent of the Colombia Union School District, which is located in the Sierra Nevada foothills of California, Nicholas Wade has more than a decade of experience as a transformational leader. What's unique about where he's positioned now is that it's a small district, just 500 students at a K through 8, who are K through 8 students. Let's welcome Nicholas Wade. Thanks. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So I know you've worked in larger school districts. What's unique about this situation that you're in now?
I think what's pretty unique about our current situation is, again, due to our size, it kind of comes back down to a matter of resources. Obviously, we know that resources are a large issue, across the nation, whether it's trying to find, teachers, instructional aides, or just trying to balance the budget. But being where we are located and considered very much rural, obviously that's just another variable that we have to contend with when we kind of deal with that, geography disadvantage, that geographic disadvantage that we kind of have in trying to get people to kind of come and stay in our district.
Mm-hmm. We had spoken a bit the other day about the benefits of having a site where you can actually, your district office is in the same building where the students go to school, so you're able to have some quality face time, if you will, with students and administrators. Talk about that a little bit, and also your teachers.
Yeah, what I really appreciate about being on campus, and also being our size, is that very much day to day I'm very much actively engaged with the students, the staff, and the parents as well. And I think that lends itself to a different type of dynamic, especially when you're trying to pursue different types of transformational opportunities, that you kind of already have more of this built-in type of relationship with all of our different educational partners. And just being on campus and being seen and visible, to me, there's nothing better, right? When you kind of have that relationship with everyone, but then you could be off campus and they find you at the grocery store, the restaurant, or wherever it may be. And you can have a little cherubic 7-year-old come up and, say, "Hi, Dr. Wade." And, it's just always fun. But if I was in a much larger school system or on a different site, you really wouldn't be able to have that type of relationship. You truly do become more bureaucratic and more like that, glorified CEO.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about some of the challenges that, generational challenges that young people are coming up with today. We're hearing so much about mental health as it relates to unfettered access to social media. And I'm curious, what you're finding in your community, and maybe as a district, how you're addressing some of these issues, cell phones in the classroom, or locking them up in lockers. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, we have a number of pieces there. First and foremost, we know that it's not just the growing mental health needs of our students, but then also just being able to meet the basic needs. And one of the things that we've been really actively working with here, not just within the Colombia area, but the greater Tuolumne County, is really trying to kind of create lasting partnerships with all these different types of, individuals and organizations, where we can not only just properly, service the needs of our students and their families, but then also kind of have that spread out to the rest of the county as well, especially given the high volume of inter-district transfers that we have in the county. Is something like services should not just be within silos to to that specific community. It should be something available to everyone else, because we are going to get those students at one point or another. But with the social media piece, I would argue, at least here, and it's not the case everywhere, but I would say, and especially in my experience, I would say while students are still very much, obviously using social media, that's not always becoming the biggest obstacle or barrier for us, like, or it's not creating the necessary issues that we kind of hear about traditionally or just like in the media. Actually, more of that is kind of coming more from, let's say, adult usage.
Mm.
So, and it's kind of one of those things where, what one parent says about another, and then it kind of bleeds into the
Uh,
school setting, and then the kids have to deal with it. That has been, I would say, especially in comparison to my larger systems I've been a part of, like that is far more prevalent here, but it kind of goes into that, if you want to quote unquote small town, right?
you're right.
Type of feel. So like, you whisper and people hear it 3 miles away. And
Right.
it's, but I would say that's been more or less the challenge.
Yeah. And, that's an aspect of this whole topic that doesn't get talked about enough about in terms of how, as parents, and I include myself, we need to do a better job of modeling
Yeah.
what responsible use of social media is like. I mean, I think that when we were kids, if there was somebody that was bullying us or whatever else, maybe 4 or 5 people found out about it. But now with the social media, it's like the entire county
Yeah.
can
Oh, yeah.
become aware.
It's, and really kind of addressing, like, for example, I mean, for, our Healthy Kids survey, that, we have, students, parents, and staff members take, where they're just questions essentially how you view one another, yourself, in terms of like how you just feel on campus. And that's really just kind of simplifying, how much it tackles about bullying, social media, your own sense of safety, all those good things. And we made a lot of inroads within the last year, from like where we were getting to a point where you had 2/3, 3/4 of all respondents saying they felt bullied, they felt there were concerns with the relationships and all those very critical pieces. To now we're like we're 75% on up feel like that they're being supported, heard, and even if they are witnessing things taking place, that they have faith that the staff and the administration on campus are actively addressing it. And that really kind of comes with, we made that a significant focus of part of our nuts and bolts campaign to really start, laying out what those expectations are going to be, having systems that support it, but more importantly, being able to follow through with everyone. And even sometimes having those difficult conversations with certain parties that are involved in these things to really make sure that, that we're all here for one another. And, we're not doing a whole gotcha thing, but like, we're here to kind of be, a nexus of community support as well, as opposed to just, doing writing, reading, and arithmetic.
Hmm. Let's talk about student engagement and maybe how you work with your teams to help them keep students engaged. When we spoke before, I think I'd mentioned to you that I think that from my observation, kids come to school, kindergartners and first graders, and sort of wide-eyed and optimistic, and then by the time they get to maybe eighth or ninth grade, I think that there's some structural issues about how our systems have kids feel this sense of competition. Like my buddy's in a reading group, and he must be smarter than I am, or I'm not good at math, and kids can start to sort of solidify beliefs that aren't often based on reality, and yet they can sort of impose limitations on themselves as opposed to still be that bright-eyed kid.
I, because I would say it's kind of going back, like before they even set foot on campus, like the tone of the day has already kind of been set. And that, goes into the importance of having all those resources and support, for our families, and why I think every district I've been a part of, I always made sure, whether, I always made it like a priority, whether the state was supporting us or not, was essentially making sure that we are going to be feeding everyone, or that we would always have like a particular room that's full of, clothing, hygiene products, and, and backpacks that they can take home. Because how those students arrive, like already just we already know how they're going to be for the rest of the day. And of course, then that means they're not going to be particularly engaged. And then they also run the risk of like affecting their neighbors, right? Or the class as a whole. So that feeling of safety, and even that whole sense of self-worth, is critically important. And that's where, like, I think the climate and culture piece, is unbelievably important, because the students know about whether or not you are genuine or earnest in that, or whether you're just kind of feeding them something. Even as young as kindergarten or first grade, they know whether or not you're lying to them. They do, and I think that's always very critical, a critical piece to always hold on to, especially when engaging with students. But I think with the other piece of it too, it kind of gets into why are they here, and there's been plenty of, as I'm sure discussion and research about having content or topics that are at least like relatable and familiar. Because I'm going to give like a wonderful anecdote, because I was a high school English teacher. That's how I started out. And I always loved getting into the spirited conversations about canon, while it would be great for every kid to read Hamlet. But that's not really necessary for us to make them, better readers, writers, and, and really building upon their speaking and listening skills. That's not critical. We have other types of texts that'd be more than appropriate avenues for us to kind of make the class, like at least their time in the classroom, far more interesting or engaging. And, for us here in Colombia, this is the first year coming in that we'll actually have articulated and formally adopted curriculum in the four core. And we're actually spending equal attention to the four core content areas and really emphasizing a lot of those interdisciplinary skills. But the other piece that we're trying to like have students become more engaged is we actually did broaden the number of arts opportunities. Like we are one of the few in the area that have a full-time music and art teacher. And we actually have structured middle school electives. So not only are they doing the four core, but then they also have the ability to they can be full-time in band or choir, they can take theater, but then we also have like STEM, enriched advanced physical education. We're doing horticulture. Since we're in the foothills, we have a lot of courses that are kind of attached to like, embracing, wildlife and kind of, and being able to navigate and live out there as well. But we also have STEAM, game strategies. We have our own podcasting class that's coming up, but trying to give them all these different opportunities and kind of like adapt from there about what they are actually responding to. Like we shouldn't be driving what we think is best for students, but really kind of offering a smorgasbord, but then being able to kind of adjust that as time goes on and really, provide something meaningful and comprehensive to everyone.
Let's step away from our conversation for a moment for me to tell you about the Journalistic Learning Initiative's innovative educational tools and services. If you're looking to make the best decision for your teaching staff and students about AI adoption, improving student engagement, strengthening writing skills, promoting social media mindfulness, or enhancing college and career readiness, please take a moment to visit our website at journalisticlearning.org. Our team of University of Oregon researchers offer customized AI tools, instructional materials, professional development, and consulting. Research confirms that students with journalistic learning experience outperform their peers on numerous key indicators for college and career readiness. At the heart of our work is empowering learners to become effective communicators. If you think about it, effective communication is critical in every human interaction, whether it's writing an essay for a grade or being interviewed to secure employment. Since 2015, JLI has benefited nearly 20,000 students and served schools in 15 states and the District of Columbia. I invite you to schedule an appointment to explore how JLI can improve your students' learning outcomes. Now back to our program.
Yeah, no, you're speaking right into my our wheelhouse in terms of working with students to help them identify intrinsic interest, and giving them an opportunity to pursue those interests. I mean, I think one of the things about journalism and podcasting is that it's the opportunity for a teacher to turn to the kids and say, hey, what are you interested in? What are you excited about? And giving them permission to go and research those topics, which no longer feels like homework. It feels like really, really,
Yeah.
I can go do that, so that's wonderful. Got to ask about AI and whether that's something you're thinking about in your district.
Oh, absolutely. It's I actually have the good fortune of serving on the California School Board Association's AI task force for us start looking at some new or some tweak policies that kind of like start including or focusing more on AI. Where I'm at with that is like I'm not looking at it as like we're dealing with the new version of HAL that's coming into our school system, and we kind of need to reckon with it. I think what it's doing, like so many other changes and transformational and seismic changes in education, has always been, it comes back down to a reckoning of what we've always been doing as teachers and leaders, like that we have to be able, that, for example, I'm going to back up. Like when you look at most of the AI tools that we currently have available, either they're complementary to what we're doing to our day to day, or they're trying to outright, supplant it in some way. And I've been part of one too many workshops where you will see someone putting on a product and a few poor souls are actually going to become the guinea pigs. And you see them actually enter in um, the data and information to and then they request a particular product to kind of come out of it. But of course, as we know, what comes out of it is only good with what you actually put in. And even what you get, do you have the wherewithal to properly evaluate it to determine whether or not that's appropriate for the learning environment or to embed within your operations? And for me, I think, in addition to it just being this huge change about what does having, let's say, an intelligence assistant that's going to be with your students throughout their public ed career. The other piece of it too, I think, is like that type of fear that we see in a lot of people is really more tied to maybe a self-reflection or self-evaluation of their own competency or inadequacies. And like that's kind of where it's getting into, where you have a lot of pieces, especially the more developed AI products, what it's able to churn out. I mean, I'm a hard man to please. You may not know that, but like, but I really am. But there are some things I go, man, I actually wish I had that. And that would have, and I always look back at how that would have been instrumental for me and for some of my students here or there. But I think it comes back into, we have a new tool that has, let's say, a greater impact in that daily learning and operations. And I think because of that impact, obviously everyone's going to be able to try and do their best to slow walk it and everything else. Where we are at here, even little Colombia, I told everyone last year, because we had lots of other things to address, I said that next year, especially as we kind of get all of our new curriculum, we're doing PLCs and having a good conversation about, meaningful assessment, right? And all those good things.
Sure.
Relatively new conversations here. But like, then we're going to have like a core working group about trying to better understand what artificial intelligence is and how we can include it. Because I think for school districts that are small, AI has the ability to really, I think, plug in a whole host of gaps in terms of what we can offer. And I think to discount that would really also be discounting our students and our families moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, just think about the perspective of democratizing tutoring. So previously you had to have means to be affluent to be able to hire a tutor for your kid, and so we know that those kids have an opportunity, have a leg up. Whereas if we now have a reliable tool that can help kids on an individualized basis, that's a game changer for many of these students who struggle. So that's, yeah.
It's a good way to kind of not only have someone, again, like they're looking at it as like IAs, like intelligence augment or intelligence
Right.
assistants, but to kind of have that resource for these students and in their K-12 career. Imagine that one single entity, let's just call it that for the time being, like that actually follows students. Like imagine that amount of information and data that can be positively used in terms of like meeting their needs or their interests or everything else. Like, to me as a teacher, especially when our students, needs, interests, and abilities are constantly being compounded day to day, it's hard to keep up with that. And it gets something that gives us, I think, a little bit more focused and detailed information. To me, that's not harmful. That's helping, I think, cut through a lot of tape that then leads to having, I think, more substantive conversations about what we need to be doing,
Yeah.
again, day to day.
Yeah. Talk about the importance of the arts, because I know that's you're doing it where you are and where you were before. You got board approval for a performing arts center, and
Yeah.
do we sometimes, to our peril, not place as much emphasis on the arts? And what do you see in students in terms of when that's available to them?
Well, I mean, I feel like they're always responsive. I don't think I've been in a situation. I remember even in one of my first districts as an administrator, that we were able to like bring that to K-8, and like especially at the middle school level, having that available almost in a similar fashion to what was happening at the high school, like really kind of building out that particular pipeline, and then just adding more time. And the thing is, like those are one of the few things like really supporting the arts. I don't think I ever had anyone come back to me and say, "Why are you doing that?" Like it's never been an argument. It's
Right.
really not. I think where people probably kind of get shocked is how much it takes to support the arts. Like whether it's you know updating your instruments or adding to it or getting a proper venue space or just even here one of our future projects is really trying, even though we're offering art, but really actually making an environment that's truly conducive, for fine arts, that we can have, that you walk in, it's a full blown art room, properly equipped, and really is able to kind of diversify what that experience can be. And our teacher is very excited about that prospect. But students are always responding well to it. And there's plenty of data and research out there that shows like, that as you kind of keep, expanding your emphasizing the arts, it does improve on terms of like, test scores and discipline and attendance. And I'd say like all that matters because it goes into what that environment is, that sense that you do have an outlet, that you do have a sense that for some students that's where they can actually be them and just kind of contributes to the overall picture like of like what your district is. And I mean, arts is one of those things that, we're extraordinarily fortunate to have like talented people here. But, going back to the resources thing, I know if one or both of them ever had to leave for one reason or another, filling that is going to be incredibly hard. And then we have to reckon with like, what's that plan B? Because
Yeah.
that's not something, because obviously if you cut things, it's hard to bring it back.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's really, I think the biggest concern is like, we're very much successful here. And it's definitely the talk around here in the county that we do have these opportunities. But, again, it's just, someone could have a personal situation and go down south, and then we have a whole different problem.
Right. Right. Tell me a little bit more about the podcast projects your students are doing there. I'm curious because that's an area that we tap into as well.
So the focus that our wonderful teacher, Ms. Craig, has for her students is really also trying to take elements of like this. We're also, we very much embrace global education here. We even had a visiting school from Taiwan come on over for a week. That was a whole wonderful experience. And I think we're going there next year, so that'll be fun. Um, but we embrace the global education, so she's really taking more through the lens of trying to get them to be more civically, civic minded and engaged with not just like what's going on here in campus, but the town and the county at large. So and she's also a social studies teacher, so that's a good way to,
Yeah.
it's also a little bit, in her wheelhouse as well. But I mean, but I'm sure that will also naturally evolve into however the students want to do it, because we don't currently have a school newspaper. We would love to have one, but like this is something that we know is a way that we kind of get some of those kids motivated in some way. And then hopefully we can start seeing it pop up in other ways, like either our new website or we start doing the school newspaper. And it doesn't take a whole lot to get students hooked.
Yeah.
Even at one of my previous districts, we had a whole podcast series,
Yeah.
and we brought in any and everyone on there, and then that even kind of stretched into some after school activities. I mean, people, once you get them exposed,
Right.
very rarely, even some of the projects that haven't always totally worked out, they've always found some sort of new life elsewhere, or
Yeah.
it's been able to kind of like again be completely restructured into something else altogether, but yet that kernel's still there and kind of like making its way. And I think that's the important thing, not just with the podcast and the arts, but even all of our other different
Yeah.
electives. I mean, we don't know what students want until we're able to give it to them.
Yeah. And it so nicely taps into those speaking and listening standards that aren't always easy to address.
and very critical, very critical soft skills for when they go into high school and beyond. For we're all about college and career readiness, and
Right.
And those soft skills are you go to any employer. I mean, they say that's something that they're trying to work on across multiple generations.
Yeah.
But
Well, thank you, Dr. Nicholas Wade. It's been a great conversation, and appreciate your time today. Thanks.
Thank you.
The Ed Leader's Edge podcast is produced by the Journalistic Learning Initiative. Please check out our latest books, Language Arts in Action from W.W. Norton Publishing, and Raising Empowered Learners from Rauman and Littlefield. For more information about our work, please visit journalisticlearning.org or edleaderedge.org. Thanks for listening.